Hi, I'm Mikoto, and in this video we will be covering some force basics. So let's start off with the tutorial. There are 3 tutorials: the basic, rhythm, and force. We're going to start the force tutorial. So first thing we have here across the bottom is our force meter. Force is measured based on the velocity that your controllers are going at the time you hit the note. So what this will show you is how much velocity you had at the time you've hit the note. So over here on the right, you can see that pulsing white line. That means I am getting 100% of the velocity required to get a perfect score. Now, one of the main differences between rhythm and force is that with rhythm, you're trying to align yourself with the center of the notes. If I try to play force the same way that I play rhythm, what ends up happening is by the time the note hits, my controllers are essentially at 0 velocity because I'm paused there waiting for them to hit. Something that I've noticed a lot of players doing, especially if they've come from rhythm, is they move to the note too early. And what ends up happening is that they have to slow down or even stop completely in order to not miss the note, which results in a poor hit. So if you're seeing a lot of random goods and pours instead of perfects, what I recommend is wait a little before swinging at the note. This allows you to cover the same amount of distance with less time, which allows your controllers to get to a higher velocity at the time that you hit the note. So something else to note is that because the velocity is measured at the point of impact with the note, timing is a lot more important than force. So if you misjudge how fast the note is approaching and start to move too soon, chances are you'll have to reduce your velocity to not overshoot the note. So yeah, my recommendation for slower songs and sections with less dense notes is to try to delay your hits for as long as possible, so that way you don't run out of space before you hit the note. Something that I wanted to mention that I don't think a lot of people realize is that the velocity can be in any direction, including backwards or like towards you. So you can actually do kind of a catching motion and still get perfect hits. It's a bit of an advanced technique, so you probably won't be using it all that often, but it is still something nice to keep in mind, just kind of as part of your tool set. And similarly, forward velocity works as well, so doing a sort of punching motion does work on occasion. I tend to discourage this though, because a lot of times the full arm extension ends up making you lose velocity for subsequent notes as you have to pull your arms back to reset. So my preferred technique is to kind of swipe at things from the sides, almost like I'm smacking the orbs away from me. I've also found that if I'm thinking about hitting the side of the notes versus the front, I'm a lot less likely to move early. Great. Also, despite what the tutorial says when you miss a note, you don't actually have to aim for the center of the note in force. You can hit anywhere along the hitbox and still score a perfect as long as you have enough velocity. So one of the good uses for the tutorial, at least for me, is to try to find where the edges of those hitboxes are and get a feel for how far away from the note you can actually hit before missing the note. Knowing the edges of those hitboxes will help later on, especially with the more kind of advanced techniques that I'll be going over for hitting some of the more difficult patterns. Kind of one of the misconceptions people have about force is that you have to move particularly fast or swing hard, and that's really not the case. Like if you notice here, I'm moving kind of pretty slowly and just very fluidly, but as long as I have that velocity at the point of impact, that's all that matters. I always hear that people say force is more of a workout than rhythm, and honestly I don't think it has to be, and it certainly doesn't feel that way for me. I try to focus more on fluid motion, which doesn't actually require a lot of force, which I realize is contrary to the name of the game mode. I actually kind of wish that force was called rhythm and rhythm was called precision, but that's a different conversation. So yeah, one of the most important things to keep in mind for force is to just not stop at the note and instead maintain that velocity and go through it instead. Fluid motions definitely help, at least for my playstyle, and different playstyles definitely work as well. I realized after recording that there was actually one more thing I wanted to mention that I haven't seen mentioned before, and that's two-handed specials for force are measured off of the velocity of individual controllers, not both together. So you can actually hold one still and only have the other one moving. I don't think you'll be using this information that often, but it's probably still a good thing to know anyway. So yeah, that covers the basics from the tutorial. I'll be working to put together another video that explains how to use some of these concepts in an actual song with actual patterns. It might take me a little while because I'm still trying to figure out the format of how I want these to go. But yeah, if you have any suggestions, feel free to leave a comment. I also want to mention that I have a force guide on Steam and a Google Docs that's in the pins on the mod Discord. And I'll also be including a link to it in the description of this video, so feel free to check that out if you want a little more in-depth text guide. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys found this information useful. I will see you guys next time.